Today, we're just going to finish real quick the digestive system. And I think last time I pointed out the three special characteristics of the large intestine, including rostra, which are those pockets that I draw on the board in the lab, and the tenai coli, which are sort of three elastic tissue bands that give the tension along the large intestine along the colon that gives it that those pockets called rostra. Okay, and then I talked about those pockets of fat covered connective tissue in the large intestine called epiploic appendages. Okay, and epiploic appendages really they don't have a non-function for it. Okay, they just there. But so usually, sometimes in the exam, I say, can you list those three characteristics of the, or unique characteristics of the large intestine or colon? Then you talk about those guys, all right? And of course, the mucosal lining is columnar epithelium, all right? And then it's got crypts, with goblet cells to produce mucus. In the large intestine, mucus will be to lubricate, to move along, you know what I'm saying? At this time, we've killed all the acid from the stomach, right? It's pretty much undigestible matter. So this is a picture showing rostra, okay? Some sort of X-ray, okay? Sometimes, kids follow stuff and they take an X-ray, and then you can always look at these pictures of cadavers, because I like that, because in the lab, you get a cat. Okay, so you can go through that. You can see the omental fat and so forth. Very similar to the cat one. And these are the epiploic appendages, okay? All right? And, you see, three bands, there's three bands of elastic tissue. And the tension in the tenai coli is what creates those pockets like that. You can visualize that, right? And then, of course, that's why it's called the sigmoid colon, because it kind of forms an S like that, okay? That's an actual, human. And then again, these you can kind of look at them later on. Okay, these are sort of X-rays. Okay. All right. So secretions of the large intestine, mucus of course protects, and in this case, more like lubrication as well. Okay. And the cecum, together with the appendix in the human, cultures the bacteria that will colonize the gut. All right, and then that's what digests all those substances that we cannot digest, like cellulose, plant cell walls. Okay, so, and of course they will enter through the anus. Okay, some bacteria will, but most of them will reach out and they're cultured in the cecum, and so they colonize colon, they ferment indigestible matter like cellulose, right? Okay. Cellulose is a carbohydrate plant material that we cannot digest because we don't have cellulose. So, and also the big thing about the bacteria, what do they do? Synthesize vitamin B, which is good, and vitamin K for us. So it is a symbiotic relationship. Okay. Oh, there you go. That's better. That's the red. Okay, so and constitute 30% dry weight. So dry weight of feces, 30% of it is bacteria. So there's a lot of it. And bacteria causes the flatus, the smell, from gas. Okay, because they are the ones that produce the gas when they're doing their digestive activities. So you can blame the fats on bacteria. Okay, because that's the one that does it.
It wasn't me, it was the bacteria.
Yeah, so blame it on the bacteria. Next time, you let one go and
friendly dog.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you see what I'm saying? So after a meal, usually that's when you have those mass movements. Okay, and then you have a bowel movement, and then you which maybe once a day, I don't know, but 3 to 4 times these movements will occur. And then when your rectum fills up and it's stretched enough, then you have the defecation reflex. All right? So, of course, distension of the walls of the rectum stimulates contraction of the rectal walls, and then relaxes the internal anal sphincter. The external anal sphincter is your job. It's a voluntary act. When it's convenient to defecate, then you do that. But in kids, they haven't learned that reflex yet. So both the internal and external anal filters open automatically. So that's why you give them diapers, and then after they learn that, to control that reflex, then they can wear underwear, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
And then on the other end of life,
Yeah,
you got to wear diapers again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you're young, you start off young and then you end up young again, because you're like a kid in the way you think, because you use your brain cells and whatnot and whatnot. Okay, so voluntary activity regulates the external sphincter, right? Because it's not always when you have the defecation reflex, it's convenient to defecate. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, you can look at these later on. These pictures of the rectum and the anal canal, showing the internal sphincter and the external sphincter. All right. This defecation reflex pretty much talks about gastrocolic from the stomach and duodenocolic from the duodenum, which is not here. Okay, this is the ileum bit. Okay, and those reflexes will, because when the stomach is filling up, the large intestine is going to be one that something is coming down the pipe, so it will start to get rid of the feces. So that's why the gastrocolic and the duodenocolic. And then all that will cause those mass movements in this ascending, transverse, descending sigmoid colon, right? And then the reflex center for defecation is the lumbar enlargement of the spine. Okay, so that's where and then if you for you to control the final defecation, it's communicated to the brain. Okay, so that the brain then makes the decision, like for instance, to open the external anal sphincter. Okay, then it will come back and tell the relaxation of that. But the rest of them, it's going by reflex action, kind of controlled by the lumbar enlargement of the spinal cord. Okay, and then that's what happens. So these are the mass movements down there. Okay, and distension here is what creates that. Okay, so this just shows that. I'm not going to play this. You can play it if you want. It's basically talking about the mass movements and how the colon will do that once there's distension here and distension in the duodenum. Okay, so you can play this just to learn, and another one again showing how the digestive function from the stomach going through and talking about. So if you wanted to just get a quick summary of how the enzymes are secreted and what happens, when that part distends and so forth, and what hormones, you can kind of listen to that. Okay. So this is what happens when you age. Decreases the mucus layer, connective tissue, everything kind of sort of slows down. You don't produce, so the mucus layer is not protected anymore, and the muscles. So you don't have as many bowel movements, as you should have to empty, and you have a tendency to get more constipated and stuff like that. And then you could lead to colon cancer and problems like that. You know what I'm saying? The secretions are reduced, which means you have more abrasion and so forth on that. So that's why when you get older, when you reach a certain age, you have to do a colonoscopy and things like that. For men, they have to do prostate cancer stuff, things like that. Okay, so it's a fact of life. So that's what happens, and you become susceptible to infections too, because you're no longer able to remove all these bugs. Okay, your immune system is also getting compromised. Okay, your gut microflora is no longer there in good numbers and so forth. So that's that for this, and we shall move on to today's business, which is respiratory system. All right, guys, thank you so much. So now we've come up to the business of today, lecture 13, respiratory system. All right, we just have respiratory system 2 and urinary system, and then we are done with material for midterm 3. And then we'll be doing the midterm 3 before Thanksgiving. So you go to Thanksgiving, good. You come back and you only do one exam in Japan.
Is it free download?
Yeah, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? So respiratory system, of course, we always talk about the functions of that system, when we talk about that any system, right? So movement of air into and out of the lungs. That's like ventilation when you do that. When you move air in and out or breathing, okay, it's ventilation. All right, moving air in and out of the lungs. Okay, so because respiration is a series of processes designed to acquire oxygen from air. Okay, and so these are the steps. First, you need to ventilate, move air in and out of the lungs. Okay, then you have what's called external respiration, which is exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the lungs and air. So this is called external respiration, right? Then these are transported. Not between the lungs and air, between air and blood, right? Air in the lungs and blood. Okay. Because you're getting air from the alveoli, and then it's crossing the respiratory membrane and then going into blood. And it's attached to hemoglobin at the heme group. Okay. And then we have the transport of these gases in the blood, right? Oxyhemoglobin, right? So at the lung, you get rid of carbon dioxide and you take in oxygen. And this is simply diffusion from high concentration to low concentration. Air will have a high concentration of oxygen, so oxygen moves from the alveoli of the lungs into blood. The blood will have a high concentration of carbon dioxide because it just came from the cells, right? And then, air, so carbon dioxide will move out. Okay, simple diffusion, right? And we'll talk about the respiratory membrane, which is what the gases must cross in order to get to the other side. And that's very important. And there are 6 components of the respiratory membrane we'll talk about in a little bit. So transport these gases in blood, all right? Okay, and then what else? Exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the cells. So that's, what kind of respiration would this be? Internal respiration, right? You see what I'm saying? Makes sense? Okay, so respiration is a series of steps. Don't confuse respiration with breathing air in and out of the lungs, because that's just ventilation. It's part of many steps to it. Okay, so if I are asked about the mechanisms of respiration and how, well, in fact, the processes in the respiration, then you talk about these 5 processes. So exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between cells and blood. So that's between cells and blood. And then, when that's done, what do the cells use the oxygen for?
Energy.
Yeah, to create ATP. Goes through oxidative phosphorylation, creates 34 ATP, in fact. That's what produces the most energy. Okay, aerobic respiration. Okay, via oxidative phosphorylation and whatnot. Phosphorylation. And the Krebs cycle and so forth. And this produces 34 ATP, okay? Plus the 2 that are produced when glucose is broken down, which makes it 36 total from one glucose. Because those, the pyruvate, which is broken down from glucose, goes to the Krebs cycle, and then oxygen makes the 34 ATP, okay? So, gotta be able to explain these processes, the steps in respiration, and be able to tell me what's going on there and what that step is called. Okay? And then, of course, functions. Functions. I kind of shot the gun a little too early when I said we talk about functions. But now we talk about functions. The first part was about respiration. So gas exchange, of course, the gas exchange between the air and the blood, and then between the blood and the cells. Okay? With the aim of getting carbon dioxide out and then oxygen in, okay? And then regulation of blood pH. How does that happen? Okay, that's because when you mix H2O plus CO2 in a reversible reaction, what do you get? You get H2CO3, carbonic acid, which dissociates again in a reversible reaction into HCO3 minus and H plus. That's how you regulate pH of the thing. So when you have more blood from the cells, venous blood is more acidic, right? Because it is just dissolved carbon dioxide from the cells, right? Makes sense? And then, so the lungs get rid of that. So the pH range is kept within a certain range, okay? So that's how the pH is regulated, okay? There are some functions of the the respiratory system called non-respiratory system functions. They have nothing to do with respiration, but nevertheless is the respiration involved. On the larynx, the opening of the larynx which goes to the trachea, there is these two vocal cords like that, just like the guitar chords. Okay, when you're playing the guitar, you strum them, right? When you're breathing air in and out, it will strum these chords to make the sound. Same thing. Okay, so that's the function of that, and we'll talk about the vocal cords today because we kind of sort of talk more about the organization of the respiratory system today. All right, so that's vocal cords right here. You see opening of the glottis, and the cords are like that. Yeah, and I'll show you next pictures of that in actual view, vocal cords in a human. Okay, so and olfaction again got nothing to do with respiration, but simply because the olfactory nerves, remember, are sprinkled on the superior aspect of the nasal cavity, so that when air is coming in, and then you got those nasal conchae, the superior, inferior, and medial. Okay, so air is going to go round like that. There's a purpose for that in the nasal cavity. It doesn't just go straight through to the pharynx or to the laryngopharynx. It goes through the nose. Meanwhile, the air is getting moistened, it's getting sprinkled with fast, and then it's getting warmed up too. Because you don't want to take air to the lung, especially now we're getting to winter when it's cold. It's going to freeze that membrane because the alveoli is one cell layer thick, and they're flat squamous cells. You know what I'm saying? So you don't want to get it will freeze, and then that's not good. So olfaction is another non-respiratory function of the respiratory system because it's got nothing to do with breathing in air and oxygen and exchange of gases, but simply because it's the air that moves in through the nose. When you want to smell something, okay, it's still the respiratory system doing it, but it's for olfaction. Okay, so smell is going to do that, and then protection. In the exam, I asked you about the 3 cells, special cells. None of you answered that question. Some of you did. I think one of you did. Okay, I was asking about the special macrophages, the special in the liver, in the lungs, and in what was the other thing? Whatever. Okay, but the one here is the macrophages here called dust cells. Okay. And it makes sense because the liver, dust and breathing in, So dust cells are big macrophages that are in there. Besides that, also the lymphatic system lines that. Any system that takes in from the outside is going to have the lymphatic system in there, okay? And then all those lymphatic nodules and stuff like that. In fact, the throat area, the pharynx, is protected by what? It was in the exam last time. What is guarding the pharynx? Tonsils, yeah. See what I'm saying? Because it's getting air is going in there, food is going through there. And then we're going to talk about the different parts of the pharynx that channel food and air to the correct channel. Okay, so protection, you know about that. You talk about dust cells. Okay, if I was to ask about the functions of the respiratory system, you don't say olfaction and put a period, because you get like maybe a quarter point. Okay, you gotta tell me about it. So that's good. All right, very good. Sorry, I didn't know anything. So this is the and the respiratory system is split into 2, right? The upper respiratory system, which includes the pharynx, the uvula, the chawani, which are internal nares or opening of the nose into the throat area. Then we, of course, the nasal cavity in the nose itself on the outside. Okay, so that, and then the lower respiratory tract would include, of course, the larynx going down, trachea, and then the bronchi. okay, which is going to be the exam, on the Monday. Lucky it's not today. And then, of course, you got 3 lobes on the right side, okay? And the right side, you remember when I showed you that time, it kind of bifurcates and it's thicker, okay? And it is more vertical than the one on the left, okay? So what's going to be here? Yeah, there you go. That's the heart there. So this is kind of allows for the heart. So there's 2 lobes on the left, okay? And therefore, the differences between the bronchi, the primary bronchus, from the left and the right is because to accommodate the heart again. So this one is kind of more horizontal on the left, and I'll show you that later. Okay, so this is just an MRI of the coronal section. That's a tongue twister. Because of the coronal suture, the coronal section, you cut like that. So you can see the orbits, and then you can see the conchi. Okay, inferior and medial and superior. Okay, and you can kind of go through this later on, and then the hard palate, or of course this is the bone that you push up against when you're swallowing with your tongue. Okay, so you look at these pictures, and I'd like you to look at this, and you see the nasal cavity there and the conchi highlighted, and the conchi create metastases or grooves and channels through which air goes like this, squiggles, squiggles, squiggles. Just like a fridge, the back of a fridge, have you seen the back of a fridge? Nowadays they cover that part. Back in the day, the olden day fridges, you could see those grills on the back. Okay, yeah, the coil. Even if you open the hood of your car, the radiator too is got those wires to increase surface area so that you get more heating and cooling, whatever the case may be. So in this case, heating, because you're cooling the air, you're heating the air to body temperature to 37. By the time it gets to the lungs, it is brought up to body temperature and it's moistened nicely with fine mist of droplets. Okay, right? Again, good pictures. Look at them later. You see the hard palate, and then of course the uvula, which closes the internal nares or the choani when you are swallowing. Okay, that's why sometimes if you're talking and you're eating, and sometimes stuff goes through your nose, through the back, and then it kind of sort of comes out. That's because the uvula you trying. Right? So don't talk while you're eating, or it can go to your trachea too, and then you start coughing it out. Okay, because the epiglottis closes the top of the trachea, the larynx. Okay, so nerves. So we're going to start with the upper respiratory tract, work our way down to the lungs, and talk about the kind of cells and change in structures and the organic compounds that are involved with those parts of the respiratory system. Okay, so the only visible parts, the rest of it you can't see. You can't see your trachea, you can't see your nasal cavity, you can't. So the nares or nostrils, external nares sometimes called, okay, that's the opening of the nose you see out here. And then the choani or internal nares, posterior nares sometimes called, is the opening of the nose into the pharynx, into the throat area. Okay, and then of course vestibule is the anterior portion, which is just, a vestibule is like a space. Vestige, vestibule, is like a space. So the anterior portion of the nasal cavity. And then of course the hard palate, which is the floor of the nose. And the hard palate is significant in swallowing. Okay, when you push up against the hard palate with your mouth open, because the tongue is a muscle, right? The food you can only go back. It's pushed to go back. If it was soft, when the tongue pushes up against it, it will just give, and then the food will just stay right there. So, and then the soft palate has to allow entry of the bolus and also close up the posterior nares of the choani, if you like. And then nasal septum, is that division between the two nostrils, makes it right and left. Sometimes people have deviated septum, they have these drugs and they're snorting drugs all the time. It gets damaged, and then there's amongst that division. Okay, so choani, bony ridges in the nasal cavity. Not choani. Concha. Concha is singular. Okay, without the E, it's singular. So then those are the ones I was talking about: the superior, medial, and inferior. And then they got grooves. You see, the one is like a little bone like that goes like that, and then creates this groove in there, and then another one on the top, and then another one, you know, in the middle. And then this groove through which air goes, it's kind of like a bond that goes like that, and then air has to go through there. So it creates a meter. So a meter is just like the acoustic meters. It's an opening, it's a channel. Okay, so it's a passageway for, you know, beneath the conch, through which the air goes and gets warmed up and gets moistened with the fine mist of droplets. All right. So again, this is a picture of actual cadaver and showing the concha singular. Okay, and then I'd like you to look at this. You can see the septum and you can see all those things. Later on in your own time, because this is the only time you get to look at the actual cadaver, you know, rather than the cat. Okay, so look at those. That's why I put those pictures in there for that, mostly for that. So provides, of course, an airway for respiration, right? It does. It provides an airway. You breathe in. So that's the deal. Moistens and warms the air up. Okay, gotta go to 37C. That's why when you breathe the air out, especially when it's cold like it is now, what happens? You see the vaporizing. Because the air is colder, so it will condense the air. Right? So there you go. Then it filters. That's why when you're jogging, you know how when you're jogging, the tendency is to breathe through your mouth. Not good. Okay? That's when your mouth and your throat actually dries up. It's not good. Because the mouth has not the ability to filter like the nose does. So breathe in through the nose, through the mouth. You know what I'm saying? So do that because of this. Okay? So if I was to ask about functions of the nose, you talk about it, you know, without even thinking about it, because it's kind of obvious. You know what I'm saying? What it is, if I ever ask about it in the exam. Okay? Don't sweat it too much. Just think of it naturally, as if, you know, I don't know. But refer to your information more than just once or a few times. Don't spend like 2 hours studying one time. I would spend it maximum 1 hour and stop. Come back again, come back again. That's how you get to just know the information better, rather than, you know. It serves as a resonating chamber for sound. There are many other resonating chambers for sound too, like the sinuses. Okay, that's why you get a sinus infection, your voice changes, and your sinuses are clogged up because they act as resonating chambers. The throat does as well. Remember when they're doing all those music competitions, what do they say? You're singing nasally, because you're probably just using your nose, and the nose is a small cavity, so it sounds like the voice is compressed. Have you noticed when you say something in a large room, in a large empty room, your voice kind of sort of booms? So you want to use your chest, you want to do it from here, from down here. That's what they mean. And use your chest, your big cavity, to resonate the sound, and of course your sinuses. Okay, but the nose does that. It also serves as a resonating chamber for sound. Gives the quality to the sound. Okay, how's this olfactory receptors, right? Remember the olfactory receptors, the olfactory nerves are sprinkled on the top of the nose. So when you breathe in air, because as the air is moistened, it will dissolve all the odorants, right? So it's a two for, you know, you get 2 for 1. Okay, so know about the functions of the respiratory system, know about the process, you know, of respiration and those steps. Okay, know about the function of the nose. Okay, and the parts. You see how you've got the olfactory tract here, the olfactory valve, and the olfactory nerves sprinkled on the top of the superior aspect of the nasal cavity. So when air comes in, you know, and gets moistened, those odorants are dissolved, and the chemoreceptors in the nerves will sense that. So the pharynx, this throat area, connects the nasal cavity and also the oral cavity to the lower digestive and to the lower respiratory system, inferior. See what I'm saying? To the larynx and the respiratory system. And so you have an oral pharynx, a nasal pharynx, and then laryngeal pharynx. Okay? And then we talk about how which passageway does which things, like air, food, drink, and things like that. So, common passageway for air, food, and drink, everything goes through the throat, right? Mm-hmm. Then it is channeled. And we'll talk about some of those mechanisms for channeling these different medium. Okay. So it's commonly called the throat, but we're going to call it pharynx. Okay. So nasopharynx will be that area just of the pharynx that is directly connected to the nose. So it's mostly air. It's air only. Okay. Food gets up there if you are, being deviant and we are talking or doing something. But it's mostly air. So posterior choani, or the internal nares, posterior nares, open up to that, to the nasopharynx, and of course the soft palate, which forms the
Nasal drip.
What's that?
And post-nasal drip.
Yeah, it goes in there too. Yep. That's why it creates a coughing reflex, because it drops in there. Sometimes it will drop into the laryngopharynx, because the throat is a big opening like this. And I'll show you a picture which kind of sort of shows the channels, those three bits of the sections of the pharynx, right? Okay, so and the pharynx, the soft palate forms the uvula, right? Which is an extension of the soft palate that closes the internal choani, especially when you're swallowing particulate matter, like drink. Okay. Oropharynx, of course, is directly connected to the oral cavity, the mouth. Okay, so it kind of from the soft palate, the uvula, right, all the way to the epiglottis. The epiglottis closes down on the trachea. It creates entryway to the esophagus. All right. Okay, and then the laryngopharynx goes from the epiglottis to the esophagus. All right. Because the flap, the epiglottis is the flap that closes down the larynx when you're swallowing, because that channel leads to the esophagus. Okay, if it's open, the larynx, the epiglottis is open, the air just goes into the larynx. But the problem is that when you're eating and talking again, what could happen? You could swallow air too, because of that. You see, because the laryngopharynx leads to the esophagus. And then what happens when you swallow air when you're eating? Okay, so if you're eating nicely, you probably don't belch, because belching is supposed to be bad manners on the table, right? Okay, so that's the deal. That's why you swallow the air, because of that.
Certain countries.
In the English countries, the English is like that, because they're more refined in English. So this is a diagram of what we've been looking at so far, with the concha and so forth, and the nasal cavity. You can see the muscular tongue there, and of course pushes up against the hard palate, and then food goes up here, and then of course when food hits this, that goes and closes the what you call it, the larynx, okay, and the vocal cords do that. Okay, and that's an actual cadaver right there. You see that? You see how it is, the crunchy and so forth. And then again, you see the pharynx. This is the whole pharynx. And then you see nasopharynx up against the nose, oropharynx from the mouth, right? And then of course the laryngopharynx that goes down into the trachea. The trachea is anterior to the esophagus in the human. That's why you can do a tracheostomy when somebody's got a upper respiratory tract block. Okay, somewhere through there, a kid swallows something and it's broken. You cut it right in there and you go straight into the trachea. Then you can put a little pipe or tube or something like that, and they breathe through that until that blockage is removed. Okay, that's that. Okay, so you can look at these pictures later on. This is kind of like an MRI of that to show. Sometimes you see a kid who swallowed a pin. The mom was doing crocheting or whatever she was doing knitting and sewing, and then the kid was playing around and she swallowed it, and so they showed I don't know if there's that MRI here with a pin right in there. It's like, oh, that's bad. Yeah, kind of makes me feel the pain. Larynx, voice box, because the vocal cords like so, right on top of it. Okay, and then the opening between the vocal cords is what is called the glottis. That's why the flap that closes that hole, that opening is called the epiglottis. See what I'm saying? Okay, so it's anterior part of the throat, the pharynx, from the base of the tongue to the trachea, right? That's what it is. Three functions. So it's an airway, right? Provides channel for air. Sometimes if I ask about the three functions of the larynx, then we talk about that. Okay, we talk about that. So it acts as a switching mechanism to route air and food. Okay, because again, the larynx starts from the epiglottis to the esophagus. So all you have to do to channel food is close the larynx with the epiglottis. So that acts as a switching mechanism to route air and food to the proper channels. That's why you don't want to talk when you're eating, because sometimes food may go to the wrong channel, which is the larynx. So the epiglottis, of course, is elastic cartilage that gets tactile stimulation from the food when you swallow it, because it kind of points up against the laryngopharynx, so that when food hits it, tactile touch receptors are probably all over it, so that it will do that reflex action. Okay, and then also helps from the vestibular folds, because it's two vocal cords, false vocal cords, which are the vestibular folds, and it's pretty much the connective tissue that kind of sort of suspends. Okay, so you have kind of like let's say this is opening, so this is a vocal cord, and it's going inside like that. So these flaps, those are the false vocal cords, false vestibular folds, and these are the true vocal cords. Okay, or vocal folds, they're sometimes called. All right, so those help out the vestibular vocal folds, which is the false and true vocal cords. They close up the larynx and the epiglottis on top, just to make double assurance double sure. So the function is voice protection because of those vocal cords that are strategically placed on the opening of the larynx, so that when air is moving into and out of, it will pretty much strum these chords just like you do strumming a guitar. Okay, so that's that. So if I ask about the three functions of the larynx, you talk about switching mechanisms, voice production, right? This is just showing you the thyroid cartilage. Why is it called thyroid cartilage? Because that's where the thyroid gland is at. Okay, and then the cricoid cartilage is on the bottom. Okay, the arytenoid cartilage it's kind of like this deal, and I'll show you a nice picture. Okay, and then it's connected to the vocal cords, and it can move like that, like wipers. You know the wipers of some cars that go like that. So when it goes like this, it kind of relaxes. It puts less tension in here, and that's when the glottis is open for breathing purposes. The position of the vocal cords when you're talking, like me right now, like arytenoid cartilage is kind of pulling over the vocal cords, so they have a slight opening here, so that when air is moving into and out of, it will strum these vocal cords. Okay, so those are the cartilages I want you to know about. The cricoid cartilage, which is kind of like the first of the costal cartilages, these tracheal cartilages. Okay, and the tracheal cartilages are C-shaped; they don't go all the way around. So to the posterior, they just don't meet; they go up 3/4 of the way. Okay, and these are protecting the trachea, and you saw them right in the cat. Okay, so that's what I want you to know. Cricoid cartilage, arytenoid cartilage, and thyroid cartilage, and the rest, it's okay. And then we've got more pictures of this, and you can examine them. I like it because it's a real larynx. Okay, and then it will highlight a few things there. The thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage is the first cartilaginous ring that's protecting and keeping the larynx patent or open, because you don't want it to close. It's different from the esophagus, in that the esophagus, you see how it all sort of folds up on itself, because the esophagus channels particulate matter, solid matter, right? So solid matter is the ability to push and distend it according to how much there is, according to how big the bolus is. But air doesn't, because air is less dense. So it needs that channel to stay open. And then we'll talk also about the significance of how the change in the material that makes up these tubes, for lack of a better word, right, because you start off with this cartilage material that keeps it open. By the time you get to the terminal bronchioles and the bronchioles, it's mostly smooth muscle. So when you get bronchitis or when you get asthma, those smooth muscles contract and close up those passages. So you need to get like epinephrine or whatever it is, or steroids to open them back up. Okay, so you use that inhaler thing, and it's instant help because it will cause those muscles to relax. Okay. So like I said, vocal cords. There's two types of these ligaments. One, you've got flaps. It's almost like a flap. So this is the opening of the larynx, and then you have the vocal cords across like that, right? So these folds that are attaching to that's what are called vestibular folds or false vocal cords. Okay, so they're kind of sort of superior because they kind of go in like that. They are on the top. Do you see what I'm saying? The vocal cords will be kind of inside it's a pipe like that, and the vestibular folds go down like that, go down like that. So they're superior to the true vocal cords which lie down here. See what I'm saying? So that's what the superior part. Because most of the time you see them from the top, and it looks like they're both on the same level. The true vocal cords and the vestibular folds, but they're not. The vestibular folds, the ones that the sort of the connective tissue is on top, and it goes down, and then the vocal cords are in the bottom. So, and these don't play a part in the sound. Okay? The false vocal cords don't. It's the true vocal cords, which are the elastic connective tissue, two bands. It's just like guitar cords that are on this inferior part that get, agitated when air moves into and out of the lung. And then the tension in them determines the pitch of the voice. That's what I'm saying. And the thickness of them too. That's why the bass guitar, how thick are the strings on the bass guitar? They're very thick. So males have thick vocal cords, true vocal cords. Females have very thin ones, okay, because they got a high-pitched voice. That's what it is, so they are inferior to that, and they are medial opening. The opening of the glottis, or the opening between those medial to the vocal cords, is called the glottis, like I just said, and that's why the flap that closes that opening is called the epiglottis, right? So when they vibrate, they produce sound, and therefore the pharynx acts as a resonant chamber. The nose does, and then of course the sinuses do. And there's a bunch of sinuses in the maxilla, in the frontal, all that. Right above in the nasal cavity area. So that's why when you get a flu, a respiratory infection, it also goes to your sinuses because they're all connected, right? Then it ends up being sinus or headache and whatnot. Okay, so laryngitis, of course, is inflammation of the. So the singers don't want that, right? They don't want laryngitis because they can't sing. That's their money cow or their cash cow or whatever. So if their voice is, they get laryngitis, that's their worst nightmare because they can't sing. So you see what I was talking about? You see these are vestibular folds. Okay, in a diagram, it's not so obvious. They look like these true vocal cords and these vestibular folds are on the same level, but they're not. You see how here it suggests a tunnel deep. So these are deeper than these. So these are superior, and they kind of sort of suspend these down there inside the true vocal cords. Okay, you see the cricoid cartilage? This is the vocal cord orientation when you're talking, because and the tension in it, and this is for breathing. You see what I'm saying? Because then the glottis is all open. See what I'm saying? And then so the tension that the arytenoid cartilage, this is the arytenoid cartilage, creates on those vocal cords will determine the pitch, and also the frequency. It will have higher frequency if there's more tension. Okay, when you strum it and then you pull on it, it will have higher pitch and the frequencies are higher too. Okay, just like the same way we talked about how you create pitch and timbre and those qualities and volume. Volume would be how forceful the air is traveling. You know what I'm saying? So that's what creates the volume. So, and then the amplitude of the wave is high. And the pitch is a frequency, because when you get more tension, there's high frequency, and then it creates high sound. You see when we did the ear? Okay, sound, vibration of the vocal cords, okay? And that's what creates the sound. and then your tongue and your mouth and all the forms, and then of course the resonant chambers gives quality. And loudness depends on the amplitude of vibration, which is determined by the force of the air pushing out and into, you know. So if I want to have a louder voice, it means my air is really forcing through my, you know, like when I'm shouting and stuff. Okay. So, and pitch, of course, is determined by the length and tension. You know, when you get more tension, then you've got higher frequency, and then you see of those vibrations, and it creates high-pitched sound. Because they're elastic, it also makes them thinner, right? When you pull on them more, they stretch like this and it makes them thinner. So it's a pitched sound. Okay. So sound is sharpened, you know, into language by the actions of the tongue, the lips, and everything. Gives it the final quality. Okay, and other structures, teeth and whatnot. Okay, so just know what pitch creates pitch and the loudness of the sound, which we kind of did when we did the ear. So this is repetitive, you know what I'm saying? And then of course sound, what it is when the vocal cords vibrate, they create the sound. All right. Of course, the throat, which is a space, any space will amplify the sound. Okay, will amplify it and give it quality. Okay, which is what we call the resonant or timbre. Remember timbre, which is kind of quality of the voice. So those things. Okay, the trachea descends to the fifth, you know, vertebra, thoracic vertebra, down, and then it will bifurcate into the primary bronchi. Okay, and then it will have, and then that bifurcation marks the end of the kind of like there's going to be a very special costal cartilage there, or tracheal cartilage called carina, which is very sensitive. Okay, because once you get to that point, you're going into the lungs. So you want to stop at all cost any particulate matter from going into the lungs. So that one, it will create very, very forceful coughing reflex to make sure that anything goes down there, it's expelled. Okay. So it's got those 15. So now I want you to pay attention to how the material that is lining and producing these pathways changes as we go deeper into the alveoli. Okay, so this is C-shaped, keeps it open, keeps it patent. Okay, and it also protects. It's it protects the opening. Okay, it does. All right, and then the first costal cartilage or tracheal cartilage is the cricoid cartilage, right on the top. So the mucous membrane lining this, we did it when we did tissues back in NP1, right? We talked about the pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium, ciliated, right? What does the cilia do? It moves mucus and fluid particles out of the way. That's part of the protection of the respiratory system. So if you're talking about protection in the functions, you can mention that. You get a lot of points for that. Okay, and then it's pseudo-stratified. It's one layer, but it will look like it's stratified because of the position of the what? Yeah, the position of the nucleus. Don't forget that, guys. And in between the goblet cells that produce the mucus. Okay. So you can see we get the stratified columnar epithelium. By the time we get to we get the costal cartilage. By the time we get to the respiratory bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, we're getting those alveoli pockets, which are one cell there, and it's squamous. Okay, so that's the kind of change that I want you to be able to see based on the function of that particular part of the respiratory system. Okay, and then of course you got the goblet. So this is the picture you should look at later on, which kind of shows you the cilia, pseudo-stratification. See what I'm saying? The nuclei all over the place. Looks like a few layers, doesn't it? But it's one. And then of course the trachea. And then this is the carina that I was talking about. See, this is the costal cartilage in the bottom there, or the tracheal cartilage. That is very, very sensitive part. Okay, because you don't want to block because as you get the divisions and divisions that get smaller and smaller and smaller. So if you get something there, the likelihood of them blocking one of those smaller part airways is much higher. So the body does everything it can to make sure that nothing goes down there. Okay? So it's kind of like the guard for the last time. So it creates heavy coughing reflexes. Very, very intense. Okay, so main bronchi. That's the first bifurcation. Primary bronchi, so you're going to get a freebie review for the exam. Okay, left and right primary bronchi, and I'll show you the bronchial tree, which is kind of like an inverted tree. Right primary bronchus is wider, like I was saying, and it kind of sort of bifurcates again, and then shorter. Okay, the left is kind of more vertical because it kind of accommodates the heart, right? So the common site of inhaled objects when they become lodged. Why? Because it's wider. Okay, which can fit more things, right? On the right side. By the time the incoming air, of course, reaches the bronchus, what is it done? And it is moistened, brought up to body temperature. All right, so it's going to be 37 degrees C, and it's been filtered. That's why you should breathe through the nose when you are jogging and doing stuff, and then breathe out through the mouth. And then it's saturated with water vapor. It gets mixed with a fine mist of droplets, so that it doesn't get there dry, right? So that's what all those airways are doing. All right. So the trachea and main bronchi, you can look at this letter, you know, and then of course how you see how this is kind of more vertical, kind of accommodates the heart. You can see the fibrous, pericardium there. Okay. So the lungs, of course, are the principal organs of respiration. That's where you get the exchange. Okay. And they go to the to the diaphragm. You know that they're right on the top of the diaphragm. They go a little bit above the clavicles, to 25 centimeters or so, give or take, depending on how big you are. Okay, so they kind of go up here, and go down to the diaphragm, right? You saw them indicate they're right above the diaphragm, and then you got the diaphragmatic lobe or whatnot. Okay, and then we know about this right with 3 lobes, left with 2. The cat has got all sorts of lobes in there, you know what I'm saying? 7. It's a lot. That's why it's got 9 lives, you know what I'm saying? And then, of course, you got the pleura, okay, that cover the lungs. Okay, you got the parietal pleura on the outside. You got the visceral pleura, which is more in close contact, and it was in your exam about the heart. You guys, some of you don't know. So surprised. Anyway, so it was the visceral layer, the one that is close contact with the heart, right? Instead of, so same thing. The one in close contact with the lungs is the visceral pleura. Okay? And then, so the outside one will be the parietal one. And in between will be pleural fluid, right? Because these are serous membranes. Serous membranes do not open to the outside, right? Okay, and then the fluid, of course, will duplicate. So I like you to look at those pictures because they're actual cadavers, right? That's why I put them in there. So the air will split into 2 to form the main bronchus, right? That's why we call it primary. And then the second division will be the lobar, or the secondary, okay? And then the tertiary will be the segmental. So it keeps branching and branching and branching and becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, and material starts to change. And it's becoming more smooth muscle, smooth muscle, smooth muscle. Okay? So just know these divisions, okay? And then finally giving rise to the bronchioles after the tertiary. Okay? Then the bronchioles will divide many times over, okay? Before you get to terminal bronchioles. You see what's happening? So 16 generations to reach terminal of division, 16 times. Then you get to terminal bronchioles. Okay? You're not done yet. Terminal bronchioles will become respiratory bronchioles. They will branch into that. And then the respiratory bronchioles will start to have little of those alveoli pockets on them. But we're still not quite done branching yet. And then they become alveolar ducts now. And then the alveolar ducts will then have all these many little alveolar pockets, which are 1 cell layer thick. And there's 2 cell types in there that we'll talk about in a little bit. So then the terminal clusters of alveolar sacs. Okay. after all those generations of splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting, so they're becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. All right? So the alveoli are where the gas exchange will take place. Okay? And then the alveoli wall plus the epithelia of the blood vessel plus the space between them is what makes up the respiratory membrane. Okay? Because that's what air must cross, gases must cross to get to the other side. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. 300 million alveoli in there. That's like the whole population of the US all up in your lungs, in these little balloons. Okay? So, and that ratchets the surface area a lot. So it provides a lot of surface area for gas exchange. Okay? So 7 generations of branching occur before you get to from the terminal bronchioles. After the 16 generations of, to get there, then another 7 to get to the alveolar ducts. So
branching.
that's a lot of branching, I'm telling you. Yeah, there's plenty. So it will give lots of surface area, so there's the inverted bronchial tree. Okay, you've got your primary bronchus, then you got your lobar, which is secondary, then tertiary, segmental, and then you go to the bronchioles, then you get a bunch of generations, and then terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, okay, then alveolar ducts, after 7 more breaths. So this is called inverted tree because the trachea will be the trunk, and then the lungs will be the leaves and so forth. And this is, a picture of an actual, just showing the branching and so forth of a dissection of the human lung. And you can see the lobes, left and 2, and so forth. This is a diagram. You see how now we have more smooth muscle in the respiratory bronchioles and all that, in the alveolar ducts. And then, of course, the tuft of capillary covering those alveoli. And the alveoli are connected by holes. Okay, so that when you inflate one, it inflates the other ones. Okay, so it's not a complete closed-up balloon, closed-ended tubes. No, they all open up into each other, so that when you breathe in, everything gets inflated. Okay. Okay, so the passageways become smaller. Okay, this is the changes, histological changes I was talking about. All right, so if the cartilage support structures decrease, you no longer have those things to keep it open like that, like the costal cartilage or tracheal cartilage, none of that. You get more smooth muscle now. And those smooth muscles can contract all the way to closing that channel. So that's when you're getting an asthmatic attack, that's what's happening. Those allergies, those allergens are causing those muscles to contract. Okay, and people who are allergic to them, those guys have asthma. And so we need an inhaler to take in steroids that will cause those muscles to relax, and then the airways open up. And the epithelium changes. We started off with pseudostratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells in the middle. By the time we get to the alveoli, we have
Simple squamous.
yes, simple squamous, and then we have some other sort of cuboidal cells. The simple squamous will be pneumocytes 1 and 2 of that, and then the other one will be pneumocytes 2. The sort of cuboid ones will be producing what? What lines the alveoli? The fluid called? Does anybody know? Surfactant, to reduce surface tension. Okay. Okay. So that's what it is. So terminal bronchioles, mostly smooth muscle. That's why they can completely shut down when they contract, which allows air to go. So if you need to go out more air, like during exercise, guess what happens to this smooth muscle? It will relax so that you get more air going in there. Okay. The only problem is when you are allergic to some of these allergens, and then you get those smooth muscles to contract, which is bad, and then it will close up. So alveoli, okay, single layer of squamous cells, simple. Okay, those are the pneumocytes 1. There's more of those, plenty. Okay, which is like 90% of the whole deal. And those are flat squamous cells that will allow the gas exchange. Okay, but then you have to produce the surfactant. So any cell that produces something, glandular cells are more cuboidal. They can't be flat because you need the volume and you need all those organelles. That brings us to type 2 pneumocytes. Okay, sometimes I ask about this. These are cube shaped and they produce surfactants. And surfactants reduces surface tension. Okay? It reduces surface tension. Okay, which makes it easy to expand and relax the lungs. Okay, so that's that. So be able to tell me these structural histological changes as you go down to the terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, all right, and so forth. Okay, I know we are kind of done right now, but let's borrow a few. Respiratory membrane. This is what I was talking about. So the respiratory membrane is going to be made up of the basement layer of the, the alveoli, okay, and then the alveolar cell itself, like the squamous cell, all right. Then there's going to be a space between it, so it's the alveolar epithelium. Then it's the basement membrane of the alveoli epithelium. Then there's a little space; they don't quite touch, and then the basement membrane of the capillary, and then the epithelium of the capillary. And then, of course, you have to do the surfactant on the top in the lungs, because it's that fluid lining the alveoli. So this is where the gases have to travel through, and it's very thin, of course. That's why it's squamous flat cells, single layer, and then, of course, the epithelial capillary is also squamous flat cells. Okay, so that is the surfactant, the thin layer of fluid, then the alveolar epithelium, right? Then there's the basement membrane for the alveoli, okay? Which is always all the epithelium of the basement membrane, they're always doing, right? And then you have the space between them. It's a very thin space, interstitial space between the two. They don't quite touch like that, okay? And that's kind of good because they're single cell layers and they're flat. If they touch, they might just become one and it's no good, okay? So basement membrane of the capillary epithelium, then the epithelium itself, and you are done. So if I ask about the components of the respiratory membrane, you spit that out. Think about the epithelium of the capillary, the epithelium of the alveoli, their basement membranes, and the space between, and also the surfactant. You done? So you don't have to think hard about this. Just think about those structures, and you will know that it's going to go through it. Because you know epithelial tissue, and you know what epithelial tissue is like. You don't have to start thinking, oh, what's the next one? You should know. You should just know it because we've already done epithelial stuff. Okay, and then of course you can see the macrophages up there. Those are the dust cells. You see them up here. Those are the dust cells. Okay, that protect the respiratory system, right? And then there's the respiratory membrane, is surfactant, and so forth and so forth until you get into the red blood cells. So the pleural, of course, is the double layer where you have the visceral immediately in contact with the lungs, and the parietal covering the cavity, and between them is pleural fluid, right? Covers the thoracic wall, and then this one covers the actual lung. Okay, pleural cavity creates negative pressure inside of it, so that the and it's got to do a little bit with the fluid inside with the pleural fluid. Have you noticed if you take two pieces of glass and then you put water in between them, and then you put them together? Has anybody ever done that? I've done it a few times. If you try to pry them apart, do you see what happens?
Yes.
You can't pull them apart like this. You have to slide them apart. Has anybody done it? If you haven't, please do that. Okay. That's what the pleural fluid does. It creates the negative pressure because the tendency for the pleural membranes to attract each other because of the. You see what I'm saying? Do that, please, and then you'll see how this works. Because they gotta stay open, okay? So the pleural cavity creates that fluid, that pressure, that negative pressure to open the lungs so they stay open. So if you get a pneumothorax and that negative pressure goes, then your lung will collapse. Then you gotta take care of it quickly. You know what I'm saying? So fill the pleural cavity made of pleural by the pleural membranes, which are serial membranes, and it serves as a lubricant, of course, because when the lungs inflate and deflate, but also holds the pleural membranes together. That's that sequestration, that thing I was talking about. If you take two pieces of glass, put water in between fluid, and then stick them like this. You can't pry them apart, you have to slide.
So you want them to stay together.
You want them to stay together to attract each other to create that negative pressure. Not all the way together, but you want the, to pull on the lungs like that, to open up. Okay? So that's why you have that. Okay? So please be able to explain that phenomenon. And then, of course, these are them with the pleural fluid in the middle. Okay, you see that? And then again diagram showing the pleural. Okay, and then the pleural membranes. Of course, look at that. It gets filled in. Boom, boom, boom. There you are. And then you've got the fluid and the visceral and the parietal fluid. Okay. There you go. That's all, folks. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Sorry, I put you fine. I can give you a flat back for the lab. Okay, how about that? If you want.